So to begin, I'm going to send it over to Thunder, and Thunder's going to open it up for us for the whole series. They have been gracious in offering their beautiful words and connection to open up the space for us for the series. So I'm going to send it over to Thunder, and if folks can make sure that your microphones are muted, that would be awesome. So off to you, Thunder.
Ani Bojo. So I'm actually going to start with an ancestor acknowledgement. My auntie Aruna asked me to do some kind of introduction. That's a little different than a land acknowledgement. I think we can both agree that sometimes land acknowledgements can seem a little pushed and a little out of obligation instead of coming from a pure heart and from good intention. A lot of orgs just kind of throw it in there last second and it's really an afterthought. I personally don't really like doing land acknowledgements and usually find a way to cop out of it by just doing something else and saying I'll do it. My auntie knows me pretty good though, and so she asked me to do something a little different. So to start off, I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about myself. I'm going to talk about myself in Anishinaabemowin, and then I'm going to talk about myself in English. The reason I'm going to do that is because Ojibwe doesn't translate directly to English, so I'm just going to speak about myself in Ojibwe as I would around my family and in ceremony, and then talk about myself in English. So Ani Bojo, Nimkin Indigenous, Ginoya Makasin, and Anishinaabe Noswin, Anamakin Dodem, Sagin Indonje. I always do my intro different, so I'm trying to think of things to tell you. Nish Manadok and Dao, Nodaway and Dao, Minwa, Anishinaabe and Dao. Akinamago Kwe and Dao, Minwa. Anjmanashi Kwai and Dao. So hello everyone, my name is Thunder. My pronouns are they, he. I come from Saugeen First Nation territory. I'm a mixed person, a very mixed person. So I am Ojibwe, Mohawk, Trinidadian, Irish, Scottish, and French. Really awesome mix. I have relations in Ganawage and my family is from Saugeen First Nation. I also told you that my mother's name is Changing Bird Woman and my grandmother's name is She Who Leaves Tracks on the Earth. The reason I'm telling you about myself and my family is I believe it's really important that we talk about the people that are here. As much as we talk about history and we just celebrated Indigenous Peoples History Month, we really forget about Indigenous people in conversations most of the time. We're honestly an afterthought. And it's really crazy that we're an afterthought considering we're still being colonized on this land. So I really wanted to just kind of start us off with that. I'm also going to sing us in and tell you a little bit about the first birthing plant I actually learned about. So to sing us off, I think I haven't decided on a song because I always do this. I don't plan what I'm going to say. I just come in. I think I'm going to share one of my auntie's songs, my auntie Nino. The song is called Dreamers Rock, and it's actually a visioning song. It came to her when she was visiting Dreamers Rock on Manitoulin. And Dreamers Rock is a really important place for my family and for my mom, who's in spirit world now. So a visioning song that came from Dreamers Rock is really important for me. Here we go. Hey, 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 oh, hey, oh. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hi, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, hi, oh, hey, oh, hi, oh, hey. Hey, hi, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, hi, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hi, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, hi, oh, hey, oh, hi, oh, hey. Hey, hi, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, hi, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hi, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Oh. So that song was Dreamers Rock. To finish off, I just want to tell you really quickly about strawberries. So strawberry is one of my favorite birthing medicines because they were one of the first medicines I learned about in regards to birth work, menstruating, or moon time, as we refer to it back home. You can utilize strawberry by making a tea out of the leaves. It's best to do it from fresh, but you can also use dried. It's really important to make sure that they're either fully fresh or fully dried. Otherwise, the leaves can actually be toxic. A lot of doctors don't recommend any plants for pregnant people during pregnancy. But midwives around the world approve and know differently. There are tons of plants. So strawberry is one of my favorites because I personally, on my moon time or when I'm menstruating, I deal with nausea and vomiting quite a bit. I have really awful cramps and sometimes debilitating pain. So I'm in bed almost all day. One of my favorite things to do is make a cup of tea or like a mason jar, put a couple of tablespoons of dried strawberry leaves in and steep it for about 10 minutes. It's really helpful. You can drink it about 2 cups a day. I wouldn't drink more than that. With any medicine, medicine can be bad medicine, whether it's good or not. If you have too much of anything, it can become harmful to you, right? So in regards to that, I just want to remind everyone while being in this space, you know, and not only in this space, wherever you are, that if you preach that harm reduction approach, I really, really, really hope that in your heart, you also apply that with everyone that you interact with all of creation, anyone from anywhere, that you do things with integrity and with a full heart. So anyways, I hope my babbling brought you some joy. I hope my singing brought you some good medicine. Yawe Goa Auntie for inviting me to share. Miigwech.
Thank you, Thunder. That was so beautiful. I appreciate you opening that up for us. Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to start. And I'm really grateful for the medicine teaching, and then also just like being able to like think through how we want to ground ourselves in with respect and love for each other and ourselves. Yeah, great. Thank you. So we're going to get started with our panel. What we'll do is we're going to open it up to the panel and hear their stories and their experiences, and then we'll open it up a little bit later with questions. So if you do have questions, make sure to either write them in the chat as we go, and then we'll address them at the end. So I'm just gonna pick folks randomly. I hope that's okay. We didn't decide who's gonna go first. But I will ask, I'm just gonna go in order of how they are in my gallery situation. So if Marcy and Lily, if you folks want to open up for us, that'd be really nice. I'm gonna spotlight y'all so that we can see you. And yeah, please share. And so the question for the panel, sorry, I forgot to do that. The question for the panel is, how did you become parents? And if you want to introduce yourself, introduce your family, and then tell us about your parenting journey up to this point.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marcy, and this is Lily. We have been married for 11 years. We started our parenting journey I guess shortly after that, about 10 years ago. And initially we had, the financial considerations to think about as well, because it was quite costly at the time. I'm not sure how it is now, but, for every time that we wanted to, okay, so take us back. First, we had to find the fertility clinic, which there were few of. I suppose there may be more now, but I think at the time in Toronto, there might have been 2 or 3. And then once you find that, of course, then you have to think about who the donor is going to be. You have the consideration of the race. I am of Latin American background, and
I'm of Haida Nation, as well as mixed from my dad, who is white, but 13th generation into Canada. So it's a lot of
considerations in terms of the race, and then also it's almost like you're deciding who your kids are going to be in terms of race and how you're going to bring them into the world. Anyway, these considerations for us didn't take too long. I think a lot of the choices that we had in terms of donors were helpful, because in Canada, when you donate sperm, for example, you can't be paid. So there were, not very many choices, and we had to turn to the American bank, and that became more of a choice of, I was going to try to carry first. So we picked somebody who resembled Lily.
Very similar to me.
In terms of, the way that her background, her cultural background, and then looks as well, because we wanted the children to look like both of us. So we found the perfect donor, in fact, and it became very easy after that in terms of just, trying. And I went through a series of six trials, which, initially I didn't actually want to carry. But I felt that I needed to give myself the opportunity to see how it would feel. And I committed to it for 6 trials. It didn't work. And it was a little bit disappointing, even though I didn't actually think that I wanted to do it in the first place. Once I committed, and once I had my heart set on, this is going to work, it didn't actually work for me. And the financial considerations were what actually stopped me, stopped us from trying with me. And then I said, Lil, it's your turn, because I felt that, we needed to change things up. And sure enough, as soon as Lily tried, it was.
But we did we did IVF.
Yeah.
So after we tried IUI with Marcy, we did IVF. And so we both did it. We both went through the process, and the clinic took out Marcy's eggs and my eggs, and then mixed them with the same sperm, and then took one of Marcy's embryos, I guess, and one of mine, and put them both in, and out came our daughter. So we're not really sure 100% if she's Marcy's egg or my egg. We can just assume by looks, but I mean, not that it matters.
Yeah, everybody, you know, I mean, even her mom, the moment she saw her, she said, "Oh, Mars, I think this is your egg."
She looked pretty just like her. And then with our second, we had a couple more tries with the IVF because we had some, I think Marcy had 3 embryos left and I had 2. So we did 2 more rounds. They didn't work and that was like crushing. And then we decided to just go straight into the IUI and give it a try. And it worked on the first try, and then out came our son. So, and he's now 5 and she's 8. So it's quite the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, and here we are.
Should I share a picture? This is the only picture that I can find right now.
Let's clear that up a little bit. Oh, sorry. I'm messing it up.
Oh, just like that, right there. Get close. Those are our 2 babies.
So yeah, parenting has been quite the journey so far. I think one of the most interesting things that we found in this journey was a group of people that share the donor from all over the world, mostly in the United States. We found a Facebook group where they share their pictures and lives. There's quite a few of them. And this was the interesting part of our journey, is that they seem to be quite connected. And they are open to us connecting with them. But we felt that our parenting journey was going to be exclusive to our family. Our family is the 4 of us. And, the idea that they do have other half siblings out there, we knew that would be a reality. We never quite considered that it would be so accessible. I mean, they go on trips to Disneyland yearly. And I love that they enjoy that. And I love that that's there for our children. But it has come to a bit of a, crossroads where we have to start now thinking how we're going to present that to them, or how we're going to create the opportunity for them to access that information if they choose to. The tricky part is, when do we do that and how do we do that? We've recently come across the situation where one of the parents has reached out to us, and she wanted us to meet. She lives in the GTA, and she's a single mom. She's told her daughter about our children, and it's all of a sudden like at our doorstep. And so we were very clear with her that the children are leading us in that, and they haven't asked yet. They understand the process. They understand that, children come from an egg and a sperm. They haven't used the language. We haven't used the language of donor yet. So I don't know if we should be, if anybody has some recommendations or suggestions, but, I do think that now we might start to really think of how we're gonna present this opportunity, make it more accessible for them, so that they can start asking questions and even be inclined to ask questions like that. Because the last thing we want is for them to get to a point in their lives where they're thinking, why didn't you tell me sooner? Or why did you keep this from me? Or why didn't you give me the opportunity? Maybe they might want to connect with their siblings, but that's kind of where we're at right now. Our daughter just turned 8, and she is very, very inquisitive and astute, and she's very sharp. So we're thinking any day now we need to be prepared.
Thanks so much, Marcy and Lily. I feel like that's a really common conversation around for a lot of queer spawn is that we have to like really consider what it looks like to share what our families look like, how we're going to have those conversations. I feel like Deb has something to add to that conversation, so we'll get into that with Deb's story. So the next person in my line of on this gallery is Charles. So Charles, did you want to share your story?
Sure. So I'm Charles, he, him pronouns. My journey started, back in 2011 when my husband and I started fostering. Yeah. Okay, then play it again. So in 2011, my husband, boyfriend at the time, was with me, and we started fostering teens.
Yeah. No, look, we're at the beach. Yeah, we're gonna go swimming. For some reason, I smell pizza. There's a pizza.
So we fostered for I got muted. We fostered for about 5 years. And after that, we took a little break and decided that we wanted to adopt. And that was an interesting process. We were with Toronto CAS at the time, and we had to do everything all over again. They had to find, we live in Oakville right now, so they had to find a worker who was willing to travel to Oakville and do our home study. So it took a couple of years to complete the home study and get a worker and do all that stuff. It shouldn't. Yeah, you're playing the game. Although it could have went faster, it was good because it allowed us to reflect on exactly what we wanted our journey to look like. After everything was said and done, we started on our own looking through what they call it's called an adoption resource exchange. So it's this horrible conference every 6 months in Toronto where there's a list of about 100 kids who are available for adoption. Many are sibling groups. 90% of them are people of color, children of color, and children who have special needs and are difficult to place. So we put in an interest in one child, didn't work out, but about a month later, our adoption worker came to us and said, we have an amazing little boy who's 2 years old, who is the same cultural match as me. So my husband is white, and I'm African descent and Italian. So my son here, who's also African descent and Italian, he was suggested, so we got to meet him. There wasn't any other parents at that point who were being considered for his name is Raiden, being considered for Raiden. So at that point, we started the process. We got to meet him. Yes, Raiden. And he likes to be the center of attention. And then that started took about the process of meeting him, getting him comfortable with us, took about 3 months. Again, a little bit longer than normal, but we were traveling a lot at the time, and they didn't want him placed with us until we stopped traveling. Say hi. So he was placed with us in February of 2020. And a month prior to him being placed with us finally, we got notice from our worker that he had a little sister. So she was just born in January of that year. And we were asked if we would like to adopt her as well. And of course we said yes, and then we talked about it, and then we still said yes. So she's having a nap right now, but she is also with us. And it took, after that point, I believe it took, it took another almost a year for her to be placed in our home as well. And back in January of this year, we got a phone call from our adoption worker who said to us, "Are you sitting down?" And we were like, "Oh, what now? You guys are always doing something to us." But apparently his mother had another child who she would like us to take us to be with their brother and sister. So that is a possibility at this point. Right now, they're still looking for kin and kinship family for the sibling, but we'll see how that works out. Yeah, that's our story.
Charles, I know you also, and I mean, this is just because I also know you and your family, but I also know that you adopted 2 older kids, right? I don't know if you want to share a little bit about your journey as a parent to older kids as well.
So when we were fostering, our first foster children were a sibling group of 2, and they were 15 and 16 at the time. So we fostered them. They were in foster care for 11 years prior to coming to our home. And then the foster home broke down, and they had some issues in the foster home. So they came to live with us. They knew before moving in that we were a same-sex couple. They were asked, are they okay with living with the same-sex couple? And they said, I don't get the question, but okay, yes, we're okay. So they came and lived with us, and they've been with us ever since. They're now 25 and 24. And although we never formalized the adoption, they're most definitely our children. They're in our wills. They inherit all of our stuff if we pass. They live in our home still. We have a home in Scarborough that they live in. Unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't gotten together as much. But we get together, of course, during holidays and any special occasion, and they call us for advice when they're arguing with each other, or just general parenting stuff. And that's been amazing. Aruna and I facilitated a group similar to this, and they would come and speak on panels as well and talk about their journey with us. And every single time I cry when they talk about the day that they considered us their family, like the light bulb moment when it happened. And
I'm like tearing up just thinking about it, because we used to have a queer spawn panel at Sherborne, and hopefully that's something that we can do later on. But just that moment where they were like, "You were our dad," it was like, yeah, it was really beautiful, especially to just like watch these like grown men of color too, just like really love being seen in that family was like really beautiful. Oh my God, I don't know, I'm crying. I'm a mess. But yeah, really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your family with us. Yeah.
The
Okay.
thing that they struggled with was how do their relationship with us and their relationship with their biological family. So how do they match the two? So one of our kids was like, his mother is homophobic. So he's like, I'm going to cut my mother out of my life because she's not accepting my father's. And, over and over again, I told him that's not necessary. Her issue is her issue. And if she doesn't want to be part of my life, that's fine, but you can definitely be part of hers. You don't need to cut her out just because of that. And then the last, actually since COVID, they've really started connecting with their sisters and their mom. And I think that's, been a great experience for them. I'm hoping one day that my two little ones are able to connect with their mom, but their mom has a lot of shame and guilt because of how they came into care. So hopefully we're able to work through that with her and she's able to have a relationship with these two little amazing kids.
Thank you for that, Charles. And Charles is actually going to be facilitating the adoption and fostering workshop, which is happening on the 24th of July. So if folks want to have those big conversations around adoption and fostering and being in a really, really inherently institutionally racist genocidal system and how to work within that in order to also support these little ones who are in care, right? They're there. No matter how much the system is awful, they're in there. And so having those hard conversations, that's hopefully what we're going to be doing on the 24th. So that's going to be a conversation that Charles is going to support us in with the experience and knowledge that he has. So thank you so much for that, Charles. Okay, so the next one in our line in the gallery is Samina. So I'm going to switch the spotlight. Samina, go right ahead.
Hey everyone, my name is Samina, pronouns are she, her. I'm a sole parent to a little guy that I had 2 years ago. I'll tell you a bit about my family, my upbringing, and then a bit about my journey to becoming a parent. I grew up in a pretty conservative Muslim family. Going to the mosque, prayers, etc., was really important. And I think that there wasn't much or any kind of queer visibility, etc., in my family at the time when I was being raised. I assumed or believed that I would get married and have a partner and then have a child, and it would follow that trajectory. As I got older, I kind of was able to think about relationships in different ways, date people across a spectrum of genders. But along that whole way, I still had this idea of I will find a partner and then we will have a child together. And as time went on, I kind of started to realize that of course, I wanted a partner, but what I really wanted was to have a child. And in some ways, this trajectory that I'd set out for myself was starting to feel increasingly ludicrous. That I needed to, swipe on Tinder and go on dates, and then go through whatever series of events that you go through to eventually parent together. And I was out for drinks with a couple of friends, and a few years ago, and for the first time I said out loud, I think I might want to have a child on my own. And was just waiting for them to kind of be like, what, or whatever. And these two girlfriends were just so as soon as they heard it, were like, yeah, of course, that's a great idea, like why wouldn't you do that? And for me, that was a really formative moment, not of just sort of saying it out loud. And so time went on and I did lots of research around what could my options be, how do I do this, and would talk about it with friends. When I was looking into sperm donors, there's so much to Google and research. And they suggested that they knew somebody, they had a friend who had donated sperm in the past for other folks, and they may potentially be an option for me. So I reached out to this friend of a friend, and that was so scary, right? I mean, it's such a big ask. There's so much hinging on it, and it's just so anxiety inducing. But I sent them an email and asked if that would be something that's possible, and they responded quite favorably. And so I now I get what would be called a known donor. I And that's when things started to become really real, right? Like it was now up to me to decide, okay, do I want to do this or not? Do I want to proceed with this person or not? And I think I dealt with a lot of that by kind of checking out. Like I did not do a lot of research. I didn't do a lot of thinking. I wasn't like, what are the legal parameters? Should I get a donor agreement? It was kind of just like, I'm just gonna give this a go and see what happens. And I was really lucky and I was very afraid of engaging with the medical industrial complex. I didn't want doctors involved. I didn't want fertility clinics involved as much as I could. I just wanted to do this at home. And that's what I did. A friend actually had they had ordered for themselves this thing called a Mosey Baby, which is this like fertility syringe that you can use that they didn't end up using. So they gave it to me. And very DIY, like went to my friend's place, like and got the sample, used the syringe, and I just happened to be very lucky and got pregnant the first time I tried, when in my mind I was anticipating this was going to be a year plus long process potentially. And so that was really exciting. It became very real. And then at that point, then I then had to deal with many of the implications of the decision that I had made. So I grew up in a single parent household with a father. I had to tell him, who was very, very distraught at what was happening. I had family members calling me, begging me to get an abortion, saying that I was ruining our family's reputation. Um, no one in my family spoke to me for the duration of my pregnancy, except for my sibling and a couple of my cousins. And it was very much my close friends who provided that support. My one sibling doesn't live in Canada. And so just, there was no mom in the picture. There were no, brothers and sisters or whatever, no partner, etc. But I think that I was able to really find peace in the fact that I was doing this for myself and I was no longer waiting for this thing that I wanted so badly. Um, and so my son was born 2 years ago, and of course, classic like Bollywood story. As soon as my son is born, my father loves him and they're best friends, and kind of has a really active role in his life. And the rest of it, I think, has been very much friends being involved, and then my soul journey. As far as explaining to my son why our family looks the way it does, a couple years ago, I made the decision to move from downtown Toronto to Mississauga because it offered us a more affordable living option. But we also live in a very there is, again, not a lot of queer visibility and not a lot of it's quite socially conservative. And I have had to start planning, right from now, how we talk about this. So at his daycare, explaining to them that we're a queer family and Jamil doesn't have a father. And knowing that like they don't always really get that, and thinking about how I'm going to explain to him that he doesn't have a daddy. And so we read books about that and we talk about that. And we have a little rhyme that we say about how Jamil has no daddy. He has a mommy and he has a nana, and like describing all his other family members has been important. And when I originally started my relationship, like my connection with the known donor, I very much kept my distance from them. We knew each other, but I didn't keep in touch with him or share much information with him. I recently started trying for a second child, and this time it's taking much longer and been a lot more difficult. And so because of that, we've had more contact. And it led to me asking them if they would be open to having a more intentional relationship with Jamil and like a more meaningful friendship, which they were open to. And so Jamil will grow up, my son will grow up, knowing who the donor is and knowing them as an uncle or a friend, but very clearly that they're not our family. They're our very good friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Amina. Thank you for sharing that. And a lot of the things that Marcy and Lily, like all the things that Samina just brought up that I've been talking about are things that are also going to be, we're going to be really going into depth in. I know there's a lot of big terms that were happening, like IUI, IVF, known donors, like all those things are really big concepts right now. But if you are wondering about them, I'm going to be teaching classes on fertility and IUIs and IVF and known donors and DIY and all the things at home. So those are workshops that we're going to be doing. But yeah, thank you for sharing that element of that DIY, which is, I think, how a lot of like queer families also happen, which is really great. So thank you for sharing that, Samina. Our next person is TG, and I will take you off spotlight and put TG on. Awesome.
I had like a moment, I was like waiting for the sorting hat to like choose me. Okay, so I'm TG, my pronouns are they, them. I'm a half-time non-bio single parent to a 9-year-old Leo and a 6-year-old Aries. I co-parent with my ex-wife, who is white, and my children are half white, and I like try to teach them about the responsibility of being white and not to uphold white supremacy. So I have some notes, so I'm just looking. So how our family building journey started. So I was married to my ex-wife, and I guess we wanted to have children, like many queer families, but then we didn't want to really use like the fertility clinics because we didn't think that we had fertility issues, and if we were a heterosexual couple, it wouldn't be an issue. Like we would just try, right? So not really trusting in the medical system either. We were like, okay, like let's use the medical system as less as we can, because literally all we're missing is sperm. So we went to ReproMed, and then we like tried to deny as many of the tests as we could. So my ex-wife carried, I didn't have interest in that. So we did the very minimal test that we had to do so that they would give us access to the sperm. Choosing a donor was challenging. We wanted, like, I guess similar to Marcy and Lily, we wanted to choose a donor that kind of looked like me, so a Chinese donor. So we had 3 options that ReproMed presented us. One person looked really, really smart. The other person wasn't even Asian at all. And then there was a donor who looked similar to like people in my family, was athletic like me. So that was like obviously the like slim pickings, but also like we were lucky that we were able to choose someone that we felt good with and was able to relate to. So at that time, no fertility treatments or anything like that were covered. So we saved up. And again, we really wanted to do it at home because like literally all we were missing was sperm. So we did IUI at home. And I remember having to literally drive to Etobicoke, pick up the like tanks with the 2 vials of sperm, and then come home, defrost it, and then inseminate. Because we had to save money to build our family, like we were really on top of tracking fertility. So we did like the ovulation pee sticks. I had like a chart measuring like basal temperature of my ex-wife and checking like cervical mucus and stuff like that. Like, I mean, we were like, we're going to spend money. We're going to make sure that we could be as successful as we can. So we were very lucky. Like we tried 3 times for our first kid. And then we wanted to expand our family, and unfortunately we had a miscarriage. And then we had to take some time away from that. And then we had our second kid on the first try. In terms of, I guess when people were talking about whether telling our children that they're conceived with donor sperm, like my kids, we've been very open about how babies are made. So they know how babies are made. And then I've been trying to tell them like, hey, you might have donor siblings, although I've not been able to successfully find their donor siblings. But they know that they're donor conceived, but they don't have an interest. They're like, I don't care. Like, you know, they know that they were made out of mommy's egg. So I'm mama, and that mama provided the sperm, which I did. So that's they know where they came from. They don't have interest. We also used an open ID donor. So, I mean, if they want access to the donor when they're 18, they can. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's it.
And I know that you said that you were co-parenting with your ex-wife. So did you want to speak a little bit about how that's been? Because that's also another workshop we're going to do later on co-parenting and the law. So if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess like out of other friends that I have who have gone through divorce, I've been very lucky that I've had a very amicable relationship with my ex-wife, aka co-parents. So when we separated, we kind of just like, we really tried to put the kids first. So we didn't have to draft like a separation agreement or like a custody agreement or anything like that. So right now we share the kids 50-50 and it's good. That's why I'm like a half-time single parent, because when I have them half the time, I'm a single parent, and then when I don't, I get to, I guess, live my best life. Yeah, did I answer the question? Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that, so co-parenting is a big conversation in a lot of like queer and trans like family planning, right? Is that sometimes it's not, it's from the jump you're co-parenting, and then sometimes it just ends up that you're co-parenting. And then so having those conversations and what it looks like to have agreements or not have agreements, written or otherwise, is definitely a big conversation I think that a lot of folks are having when especially families have multiple parents, if they have, 4 or 5 multiple guardians or parents involved in the kids' lives. So that's becoming more of a conversation, and we're going to have a panel hopefully of co-parents that do co-parenting in a variety of different ways, to try to expand on what that looks like in the queer and trans community. But thank you for that. Our next person is going to be Onar. I muted myself. I'm going to add spotlight, and there you go. Go ahead, Onar.
Hi, thank you, Aruna. Hello, everyone. My name is Onar. I go by she, her pronouns. I am a parent to an 18-month-and-a-half-old who just fell asleep. He was with me, but he fell asleep. This is nap time. So so he's not going to say you hi now. I'm going to talk a little bit about like others, how we became parents and the path that we chose. I was thinking about it last night, actually, and our journey to parenthood initially started in 2016, and I got pregnant in 2019. So it took us about 3 years. And I actually remember, Aruna, you were part of at the beginning of our parenting journey, because we did participated in a workshop just like this, except it wasn't specific to BIPOC at Sherburne Health. It was through Queer Parenting Network, I think. At the time, it was around 2017, maybe. I'm not sure, 17 or 18. We participated, and you were facilitating a small group for BIPOC people. The parent wants to be, so like I distinctly remember, and that workshop was actually really helpful to us in terms of, because I have to be honest with you, I never thought I would be a parent. It was not necessarily what I imagined ever myself, but my partner really was big on kids and always wanted to have kids, and so I agreed. And so admittedly, I came to parenthood also late. I'm over 40 years old, and that is something I would like to also share with you, because it is important if you find yourself involved within the medical system, the pregnancy and birth. Over 40 is something I find people walking in eggshells around me during my pregnancy because of my age. And but why the path that we chose had a different number of considerations. We started our journey in 2016, and for me, the biggest things for me, even though I stayed in Canada for a very long time, I've been here for maybe 21 years. I became landed only 2017. So for me, the most important thing was to have and become landed and have permanent resident status and have access to secure healthcare. I did not want to have pregnant before I have an OHIP card. So that that took a while. And in the meantime, when we participated in different workshops and did research and learned about the different ways of becoming parent, it became more and more clear that the path that we wanted to choose, adoption, was out of question for us. Not only we are a queer and a racialized couple, but we are also a disabled couple, both of us. And if you are particularly disabled, the adoption is not something we were willing to put ourselves through, knowing that how ableist the system is and how that would not, in addition to being racist and homophobic, all that stuff. So we knew that that was not going to be a possibility for us, because interestingly, I ever thought I ever have a kid, I would adopt rather than bringing another one to the world. But I knew that that was not going to be a possibility for us. And a private adoption is something out of our range in terms of the financial considerations. The secondly, going through the fertility clinics or the sperm banks. Again, for some of the panelists before me mentioned that we wanted a minimal involvement with the medical system, and choosing a sperm bank meant that we had to deal even a small level dealing with the fertility clinics in some ways, and we weren't really willing to that, and also I think we wanted to have our kid to access to the person who would be our donor as part of our extended family. So like there were a number of considerations, and this was one of them. We wanted someone from the community and a known donor so that our kid would build a relationship with this person, and not immediate family, but as an uncle, like a part of our extended family. So this was important. Race and cultural backgrounds was absolutely important. We did not want to have, so it also took us a while because I was going to carrying, my partner would not be able to carry for different health reasons. So we knew that I was going to be the one who would carry. And then, so the person we wanted the donor to resemble more of my partner's cultural background or race background, but it was not that easy. He's from Iran. So we approached a couple of people in the community, and there's not too many anyways, that we don't have too many alternatives. And so first three, actually, the people that we approached, we did not have a positive response. So it took us a while. And each time you approach someone, it takes a lot of time and courage to do that. And then when you have a negative response, then it takes another time and which understandable, we certainly respect their decisions, but it is hard to start all over again. So that's also part of the reason why it took us a while to finally the fourth person we approached to agree and happy and excited to be part of this process with us. So again, cultural backgrounds, race background, financial reasons, being queer, being disabled, having a landed status and access to healthcare. These were all important considerations before and during our journey to parenthood. And so once we had a conversation and finally find someone who agreed to be a part of this journey with us, we had extended conversations with this was a community member, and our idea was to try to, again, some of you mentioned before me, to do it totally on our own at home. But we also knew that, and even though I tried to resist, you are embedded with that ideology about having over a certain age and the quality of your body, quality of your egg, quality of everything. So I agreed to do minimal number of tests just to make sure that there is nothing visible on the way that would prevent me to getting pregnant. So we didn't want to waste a lot of time for the other person, for the third person party involved as well. The other thing we also did, we wanted to have a plan B. Again, this was mostly because of the age and disability considerations that, so we did have a doctor in Mount Sinai Fertility Clinic. This was as a backup plan, and this was also to make sure that if our work at home, trying on our own, this is the initial agreement that we had with our donor. If the initial 6 months period wouldn't work, then we decided and agreed to go more medical route. But for 6 months, we want to try our own. It was important to us to try to, again, to have minimum level of medical intervention or involvement in this process. So Mount Sinai Fertility Clinic, though, I have to say, both myself and my partner had really good experience. My partner is a trans-masculine person, and when we went there together, and they expedited the process and the waiting list for us, because I was over 40 years old, and they expedited if you are over a certain age. When we went to the clinic, none of the people there, from the people who took to our, information to our doctor, had any reaction, and even asked which one of us would like to carry the baby. So that was a good experience for the. I don't know if this is a general experience, but this is our experience, that as a trans person, my partner, and I confirmed with him as well, and he's not with me right now, but that he did have a positive experience in terms of in the clinic. We had a doctor and I have to tell you, they do not necessarily condone you to do trials at home. They were not happy with us when I suggested them, this is the route we want to take. We are giving 6 months to try with our partner at home, and if it doesn't work, and then we want to come back to you after they ordered me a bunch of tests and they all came okay, they were not happy, yet they didn't say no. So, and we were really sure about it. So, and we were lucky enough that in our second trial, I got pregnant. So I did not need to go on with the further treatments or the further intervention from the clinic, fertility clinic. But as a backup plan, we also put our names to the IVF list, because the IVF list takes about a year waiting. And even if you are not sure right now whether or not you want to take this route, just put your name anyways, because it takes a year. By the time they called me from the IVF clinic, my baby was already born. And I told them, thank you. And my doctor, we were again lucky enough that my doctor let me to do that, even though she knew I was pregnant, because technically they are not supposed to put you in the list if you're already pregnant. But she knew that we were really stressed. We were really worried. I'm particularly a very anxious person, and I wasn't sure, even after 6 months of being pregnant, if I could carry to the term, if that would be an okay birth. So and she was very nice to agree to keep us in the IVF waiting list. So this was our backup plan. And again, we were lucky to, get pregnant in our second trial, and we totally did everything at home. And I don't know if Samina may remember, but actually I was part of a Facebook group for the BIPOC people, parents. I forgot the exact name of the book, and at the time, Facebook group, but at the time when I was trying to get pregnant, I was looking for information, I was looking for supplies and resources, and some of you were there and you were very generous. And Samina was one of the people who actually gave me all her extra supplies. And I didn't meet with you in person because your friend, I think at the time you were very pregnant, and your friend dropped me in a subway stop the extra supplies, all these pea sticks, to determine your ovulation time and all that stuff. So so that was very, to me, that was very meaningful. That was really so there was a lot of people, even though you didn't know me and I didn't know you, there was this connection there. And so we did use a lot of close friends' helps to do it at home, because I had no idea about any of this. As I told you, I'm not into babies. I was not really, being a parent was not part of what I imagined myself to be. So I didn't know any of these things. So my friend was YouTube videos and the close friends who went through this process to constantly ask them questions. What do you do? How do you do? Because these panels are really great, but they don't necessarily come and tell you, how to put the sperm inside you. How do you even take the sperm from the cup to the syringe? And there's so many air bubbles. How I'm going to do with that? So you have to have a certain cup which is easier to take to the syringe, but you don't know these details, because maybe there are some some workshops, I don't know, but these were the details that I had no idea about. And I had to constantly, like, even during the process, trying to inject the sperm inside me, texting the friends, what are you going to do next? What are you doing now? So we are grateful to community and friends who helped us during the process. And so just please reach out and ask people. People are more than happy to help you, for those of us who went through the process, to help you. And particularly for those of you who maybe above the age of 40, how to navigate the system, I would be more than happy to be there and support you, because this was one of my struggles throughout my pregnancy, particularly towards the end, because I gave birth in my 40th week. But once you enter the 40th week as someone over 40, there is this 40 over 40 rule that they become really anxious, because they're statistically the likelihood of giving a stillbirth increases, particular after a particular age, after week 40. So like there was lots of back and forth negotiations, some miscommunication, and I had beautiful, wonderful midwives who helped me through the process. But even with so I did not even involve the doctors up until the last moment, but even with the midwives, it was a back and forth navigation and negotiation, as someone who's disabled, as someone who is older and considered advanced maternal age. It's called MAA. But I think I'm really happy. I'm really proud of ourselves and our family at the end. That was not easy, but I'm really happy with all the choices we did, and I'm grateful for the community who's been with us throughout this process.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Honor. Yeah, I mean, community makes everything like happen. I feel like, yeah, there's been so much. The reason why I like am where I am is because I also started taking these classes and trying to figure this out. And it really was just like my midwives and my friends and my community, and seeing the possibilities and all the different ways that families exist, you know, like I feel like when I heard about, like, even just, we're going to hear Leroy now, but Leroy's family is such a great like example of like just possibility and like love and abundance, you know. So I'm just really, there's so much possibility when we connect with community in this, and our community is great. Like, especially QT BIPOC folks, like we got each other's back. It's so nice, especially in family stuff. I feel like I can put things out and know that, you know, I have people who are going to show up for me. So yeah, yay for community. I love that. That's so sweet. And if there are folks who are looking for community or want to connect with folks, I think that's something that we can also support people in as well. So and with that, I'm gonna bring it over to Leroy and take off spotlight. There we go. Go right ahead.
Okay, thanks so much for including me in this. Everybody's story is so touching, and yeah, so how I decided to be a parent. I decided to be a parent around 2010 or 11, something like that. I was already working with kids. I love kids. I was teaching grade 1 for like about 10 years, I think. And I really wanted to have my own child and like be part of just helping a child to find themselves, find their purpose and everything. At the time, I decided to use a known donor because I really don't like doctors, hospitals, and all of that situation. It just really makes me afraid. So I started to ask my friends if some of them would consider being a known donor. And eventually I asked one person and he just was like, of course, my sperm is your sperm. No, like, it's no big deal. And so I decided to try with that person. And I was really lucky that I only had to try to inseminate once, similar to, I think it was Samina. And I tried that at home and with the syringe method, and it worked. And after, like, I remember talking to some of my cousins about it, like just like straight cis women. And they're like, wow, how did you do that? I would actually love to do that because it's so much less like headache. So that's how I did it. And I gave birth at home too. My daughter is 7 now. And I'm a transmasculine person. At first, I didn't really identify with the idea of being a dad at all. So I identified as mom at first when my daughter was born. Now my daughter calls me daddy, which was her choice, and I'm getting used to it. So it's like, I don't know, just always being flexible, I guess, with what your kids need and how they receive you. And yeah, at the time when my daughter was born, I was a single parent, I was a single mom. So being a single mom to an infant was really, really challenging in the sense of just sleep, not sleeping, dealing with the like medical system, even though I had my baby at home and everything. Certain things came up and it was challenge. Like I had difficulty with chest feeding. And so when I went in to see the lactation consultant, they asked me if I wanted like parenting courses, CAS referral, and that. And I was like, wow, that's really extreme for just coming in to speak to a lactation consultant. And that was actually the second time that I came across that sort of like sentiment and like violence towards me. I also had to see a doctor when I was pregnant through perinatal mental health because the hormones when I was pregnant gave me depression. And at that point, they tried to set up like a birth alert and CAS worker for me for when my child was going to be born. So for those situations, like my midwife was so crucial to me because she actually advocated for me so much in those situations and protected me. And yeah, aside from that, like I enjoyed being pregnant. I love being a parent. I became a parent of 2 like bonus kids about 2 years ago when I met my partner. And so now I have 3 kids and my other 2 kids are 8 and 11. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my parenting journey in a nutshell.
Thank you for that, Leroy. Did you want to also share, and feel free to not want to, but did you want to also share about the community aspect about this? I remember that big family of community of people who were in your kid's life and in your life, especially when you had first given birth. And so I remember just seeing pictures of like this big crew that they had. So I don't know if you want to share about how that came to be or how you brought people into your life.
Yeah, like even though I was a single parent when my daughter was born, I am so lucky that I never really felt like I was alone. Just a lot of different people are people that I consider part of my family. Like I have my blood family, I have my chosen family. I have some siblings that I grew up with, some blood siblings that I didn't grow up with. I have some siblings that are my chosen sisters, my chosen siblings. And like so many people played a role in my child's life, like from the time she was born, and some of them are even in this call too. And that's just, I think it's like something that's inherent not only to being queer, but also to being Black, just the idea that family isn't just your blood family, like your chosen family could be thicker than blood. And yeah, I feel really lucky that my family and my daughter's family has included so many caring adults. And yeah, what else to say.
No, that's great. Thank you. I just think that's so important. I think it's important to think about like how family looks really different and beautiful and beyond borders, beyond blood, beyond everything, right? So
For sure.
yeah, I just love that about like our families, how we expand instead of insulate, you know?
Yeah, I remember like somebody talking to my daughter about like their family, and they're like, I have a mommy and a daddy. And my daughter's like, okay, well, I have like 5 moms. So she's like, she wasn't even bothered about that.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And your daughter is so fierce and brilliant. And I think that's also an extension of all the ways that they exist and how she like has access to all that. So it's such a gift. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our last, but definitely not least, panelist is Deb. So I'm going to just take this off of Leroy and onto Deb. And Deb's going to share. Deb, your co-host, I think, right? You can access that if you want to.
Yeah, I'll
whenever you're ready.
Images and stuff like that when I'm ready, if that feels okay. I just want to start by saying thank you to Birthmark, all the team members, Aruna for doing this panel, Gab, and everybody else who's making this happen today. And of course, the amazing queer folks. It's been a long time, you know, being in a space with queer parents that aren't in my chosen family, you know, or in my bubble or whatever. So it's really cool to be in this space. And I just wanted to honor all the people who are attending here right now. I remember that burning desire to be a parent. It was like my obsession. It was like I hated everybody who wasn't a parent. I hated people who got pregnant, like, and I wasn't pregnant. Like, so I just, you know, it's sending love to that desire, that natural humanness of wanting to create a family and honoring that. And then honor to this, I know that there's a couple people in the participant space that are new parents. So like, you know, I wish you all the sleep in the world, even though you're never going to sleep the same way again. So just honoring our desire to do the most human thing as queer people of color to parent, which has definitely not been a right, especially for Black and Indigenous folks to parent. So I wanted to start off a little bit like, my name is Deb Singh. My partner is Claude. We've been together for 14 years now. Claude is 18 years older than me and birthed two children that are my age. And then adopted another one who's 32. So, and then Adley is the 4th kid. So, and for a long time, I called myself a stepmom as a joke, like also because like, I can't be really a mom to somebody who's like technically 2 years older than me, and a step grandmother. So of the 2 oldest kids, there are 7 kids among them. So, and I have deep relationships with all of them, and 3 of the grandkids in particular really pushed me into wanting to have my own child. And that was an interesting journey at the very beginning. I'm 42 now, so about 9 years ago, I started my parenting journey. And I'm a settler who's non-disabled and woman of color, Trini, kid of first generation Canadian or whatever on Turtle Island. My parents are immigrants. Claude is non-binary, queer, identified as a lesbian for many years. Has disabilities. We have this age difference. We're both activists, or I'd like to think we do that work. And so that really peppers like how we choose family and the multiplicity of our blended family. And so I feel like my journey to parenting started just with Claude in terms of becoming a kind of co-parent to her adult children. and then raising all the kids, the grandkids. The grandkids range in age from right now 26 to 8 years old. Adley's 7, so he is an uncle at 7 years old to 7 grandchildren that are all older than him. Okay, and we all make that joke on the regular basis. They're like, Uncle Adley, like, and they're like, no, we actually introduce Adley as the uncle now, and it's less like a joke and more like the reality of our family. And that's just the bio ones. That's not even the chosen community that we have to in order to, you know, hold this brood together and support the strength of our relationship as a co-parenting unit as me and Claude. So there's so much to the journey, but I'll start with our biological son, Ads. I just want to share the shot of how cute he is. Oh no, it's doing this weird thing. Oh, there it is. So that's Ads and Claude, and Ads is now 7. But because our age difference, we weren't sure if Claude wasn't sure if they wanted to have another kid. That would have been their 4th kid. And so I started wanting to cultivate a co-parenting relationship with my best friend. So my non-romantic best friend who was around my age. And we worked on cultivating a co-parenting relationship for about a year. And then they didn't want to co-parent with me anymore. And that was really devastating and challenging. And so I was like, frick, is Adley gonna, like, is Claude still gonna want to parent? Because it would have been like a 3 parenting unit, like me and this other person would have been the main parents and Claude would have been like my partner. But Claude was really supportive on the journey. And so I continued on. I took money out of savings and did a bunch of things and thought about unknown donors. But I first went to like some of the other esteemed panelists here, to people we knew in community. And there's some of them were like friends, you know. And then I went on Craigslist and had a couple of like dates on Craigslist trying to get like random free sperm, which like that was like way weirder. But everyone in community said no to me. I was like, what? Like, this is really interesting. I felt, you know, so many feelings, and I just want to honor like all the feelings. There's so much more to our journeys than a 5-minute, you know? So it's like so amazing to watch you all like try to tell this journey in 10 minutes or whatever, because there's so many feelings, right? And so I was really challenged when many people in community said no to me for free sperm, because I did want a relationship. I did want more people and more humans and more community for Ads. But a lot, like 2 or 3 community members said no to me right off the bat. And then I started going on Craigslist. And then that was weird. I was like, ugh. And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna actually, I started doing intrauterine insemination at a fertility clinic, and I was worried I was going to run out of money. And that's when I went to Craigslist. But I tried getting pregnant with unknown sperm that I bought from a sperm bank 5 times, and on the 6th time I got pregnant. And I'm going to just do a quick little, Aruna knows this, and she plugged it in my chat on a private message. I wasn't sure I was going to do it, but I busted it out. I wrote this book for Ads, and I'm sorry you can't see it because I have a blurry background, so maybe I'll just take off my background if I can find my cursor in the sun. And I wrote this book for Adley, and it's kind of touching on, you know, parenting definitely touches on our deepest experiences. And it certainly took me back to my relationship with my parents. And because I grew up with a single mom, and thank you so much, I think it was Samina who talked about your relationship with your parents, because that super affected me too in various ways. I didn't really know myself because my mom was a single mom and my dad left when I was 8 and I didn't know. So I really wanted Adley to never have to guess who he was, even though he was going to always, quote unquote, have to guess because I chose an unknown donor through a sperm bank. But I didn't want him to have a recollection of being told that he was a donor kid. I didn't want him to really guess or be weird about like who has uteruses and how babies are made, and if you have to be a certain gender to have a baby or whatnot. So I've written several stories to Adley over the years to give him a sense of his own identity, of course, through my story writing and perspective, but nonetheless, they're stories about him and where he comes from and who he is. And this one I wrote to him when he was 2, for him being 2 years old. And it gives a little more detail on the how of the things. So there once was a wish. So sorry, I'm going to start again. How You Were Born, an Adley book special edition by Mommy and Mutta. This book is dedicated to Adley, Rowan, Jacob, and all the donor siblings to Adley Hunter Michael Singh. There once was a wish that turned into a son, and this is the story of how that came to be. Adley, when I was younger, I wanted a child so much. I wanted to be someone's mom. Mutta and I decided that we were ready to be parents together, so we bought some sperm from a sperm bank. We picked Sydney, the sperm donor. These are pictures of Sydney from his donor profile. We would go to the clinic each month and try to get Sydney's sperm to meet with my egg. The sperm and the egg met. When the sperm and the egg met, we could say, I'm pregnant, but we tried 5 times and the sperm did not meet the egg. They always missed each other. On the 6th try, I took a special injection that helped me produce 2 eggs. Finally, the sperm and the egg met and they hung out for a while. They started to mix up and become something new. The embryo started to grow. After 10 months gestation and being born on your due date, April 2nd, 2014, we had a beautiful baby, Adley Hunter Michael Singh. In June 2016, Mommy and Mutta discovered that Adley Hunter, you have 3 donor siblings. A donor sibling is a person who shares the same donor as you. So the donor siblings' parents also chose Sydney as their donor when they wanted to get pregnant. So that is the story of how you were born. You may have many more questions, and you can always ask Mommy and Mutta anything about how you came to be. Being a donor kid has its ups and downs, and we are always here to support you. We love you, Adley. And those are baby pictures of the donor and Adley. The donor's on this side and Adley's on that side. So yeah, that's a little bit more detail of ads. And I'm very visual. So I just have to share this as Adley now. He's just so good looking, y'all. Like, don't you think, like, he's so good looking, right? Like, how can you not be like, you got a fresh cut and a panty? I was like, yo, like, you're just gorgeous. So super proud of the, we wouldn't have the amazing human son today without building multiple communities in our workplace, communities in our chosen family, and the 11 of us who are Boulanger Singhs in my family, in my blended family. So thanks.
Thank you, Deb. That is so beautiful. I love that book. It always makes me really happy to see. So that is our panel. I think we got everyone, and thank you so much, everyone, so much for sharing. That was such a beautiful array of like stories and experiences and different ways you brought little people into your life. And I'm just so grateful that we have an opportunity to witness and experience like what has happened and how we got here. So we have about half an hour left, so we actually have time if folks want to, if the panelists want to actually address or talk to each other, we have about 10 minutes for that. If there's something that you're like, hey, actually, when you said this, I was thinking about that, feel free to do that. And then we can also open it up for questions from the folks who are listening and watching after that. So is there anything in the panel from the panelists that we want to add? Another question that I have a question also, if folks want to, and want me to ask, it was more about if there was any advice for upcoming or soon to be or possible parents that are watching or listening. So if you want to include that in like any kind of things you want to add. But yeah. And if you want panelists, you can just unmute yourself and go for it. And I'm going to take off my spotlight.
Hey, it's Samina here. I wanted to say that it was really good to hear about people's experiences with midwives, especially your story, Leroy. As part of my whole thing around dissociating from the process, I just decided to use my like family doctor who was just geographically close to my condo because I didn't want to go through the process of contacting midwife places and like just involving more people and having more engagement. And in retrospect, I really wish that I had done that and maybe had someone who could have provided more care. My doctor was fine; they were totally fine, but I think that was a learning that I had as someone who is really afraid of engaging with the medical industrial complex.
Yeah, I also wanted to shout out to the midwives. I forgot that part in our journey. Yeah, we used the same midwives for both our kids, and they were just phenomenal and just like also really good in advocating for us. Like when we did end up having to go to the hospital, it's just midwives are just awesome. And you see them a lot more often, and they're there to answer like your little questions like here and there, you know, instead of like having to make a doctor appointment with your OBGYN or whoever. Like midwives are awesome, so shout out to them.
Another great resource in addition to midwives are also doulas. Doulas are a really great resource that are available. I don't know if Gab feels like they want to come on and maybe talk a little bit about doulas, but doulas, I don't know if any of the panelists had a doula or can speak to that experience of, yeah, Onar, if you want to speak to like what it was like to having a doula and a midwife, because I think those two in connection really support, especially queer and trans folks in a medical system. For advocacy, I feel like advocacy was really important. I mean, I didn't touch on my birth stuff because I feel like that's a whole other ball game, especially around NICU experiences. But so we won't get into that today. But yeah, if anyone wants to touch on having a doula and a midwife, that is a really good resource to have. I wonder if you wanted to go for it.
I just wanted to say briefly, thank you for reminding Aruna about the doulas. We did had a close friend and we talk about it. The one concerns we had about doulas, not that we wanted to have a doula and support, because even though midwives are great and very supportive and helpful, it is different because doulas are much much available than the midwives, because midwives are have a certain schedule, certain times they can see you, like certain frequency, but doula has been something certainly much more helpful. However, they are not really covered. I mean, I think there are some services, particularly for racialized families or the Black families that provide free doula services, but we didn't want to take up that space, and neither are we Black or so we didn't have financially, it was one consideration, but there are doulas who are working in a sliding scale a fee schedule, who you could work with. So we have a close friend who we talk and ask their help, and I have to say that was really instrumental towards the end of my pregnancy, when I was particularly going through after my water broke, because after your water broke, they did not immediately ask us to go to hospital. They have to have a certain, I forgot all these technicalities. It's kind of a blur for me. But during that time, having a doula immediately drove from 3 hours away to come our place and spend all the time with me until the midwives, it was time to go to the birthing center, and the midwives to meeting midwives was essential. If we didn't have a doula, it was just me and my partner, donor, and I don't know what would have done. Like, we were freaking out. We didn't know, like, this is the first time we were going this process. So it was absolutely essential. And if you could find a way to connect with someone and negotiate, and how you could have someone, that would be, I would absolutely recommend, because that was essential for us to keep our cool and keep doing what we are doing until the time to meet with the midwives during the birth process. So that process was particularly very helpful.
Yeah, anyone else from the panel want to touch on support services, also for any process that they went through? I don't know, Charles, if there are things that support services for adoption fostering processes, but maybe we can talk about that after. But Deb, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I do want to hear what Charles has to say about that, but I was gonna turn it aside a little bit and say that there are like intentional services like midwives, doulas, perhaps more systematized services for support, but I found it, and this is kind of like, pivoting a little bit, but as queer folks, like, I mean, as parents or non-parents, straight, queer, two-spirited, like trans, non-trans, like cis, I felt that there's a divide between like you're a parent or you're a non-parent, like now, and then there's this interesting divide between like wanting to have a kid versus like, no, I'm never going to have a kid in queer community. And so my journey of like before I was pregnant, but really trying, and whether that was trying through relationships or going to queer parenting workshops at the 519, but like not actually trying in, a clinic or at home with sperm and uterus or stuff, like the most supportive thing to me were like other people who were on that journey that didn't think I was like, that just didn't wanted to talk about that. So it was like very the informal supports of like, because I found that there was a lot of queer folks who were like, I don't get with kids. So like, you're like talking too much about this. Like, and so that felt hard sometimes, whereas other folks, were trying, or they were pregnant along with me. And that like literally got me through my journey. Like those relationships where people were really on that same trajectory. And then I didn't realize after, getting pregnant and then actually getting to have Adley and all that stuff, that like the next community that I would need was parents who had kids in and around his age. So like, even though there's people who are like 4-year-olds or 3-year-olds, you're like, I'm running after 7-year-old, like across the street. Like it's really interesting to have that kind of community in terms of like all the way through of just, and so, kudos to everybody doing this in a pandemic too, because it's like particularly isolating when you like need more community than ever to just not feel like alone in this weird journey. So yeah, just sorry, I'm pivoting around the informal community supports versus like the doula stuff, but
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good point. I mean, this is touching on a whole other thing, but I also realized after having a kid that your friendships change. Like who you have around you in your community, like changes, like people, it shifts a little bit, and people that I thought were going to be around weren't around. And then people who weren't before are now here. Like, it's interesting to see who shows up and who doesn't. And then who also is like, actually, I just want to like get drunk every weekend and continue to do what we did. And I'm like, I have like a child. I have to put her to sleep. And how that shifts, right, in the expectations of friendships. But yeah, Charles, I don't know if you want to touch on that question that you had before, that I was asking before, if there are supports available for, and we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, in the workshop in 2 weeks, but if there's anything that is kind of like a doula or midwife, but for adoption processes, I don't know.
No, not really. The only thing that's available really is, it's called Adopt for Life. So it's a community of parents who have adopted, and there's meetings pre-COVID, but right now it's mainly online, and people talk and they ask questions. They ask anything around like funding and what do you do with this random situation that I'm in? How do you create community with birth parents? How do you deal with this situation? How do you deal with that situation? So there's 3 phases of groups in there. There's pre adoption or pre, parenthood. There's the one when you're as a parent, and then there's different communities for like LGBTQ plus members, and then members who are racialized and different things like that. I find that it's mainly white cis women that talk and create communities with each other. So I personally haven't created any community with anybody in those groups, other than creating community for people, or talking to people I know who Aruna and I have had in our classes, and then they happen to be part of the community as well. But other than that, it hasn't been really that supportive for me personally. But I have heard that it's been very supportive for people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's time to create one for adoption fostering supports, right? Especially for BIPOC community, and especially for parents who are like queer and trans community members who are taking on like especially like racialized kids who need support, and also making sure that we're like supporting them in the best ways possible. It'd be really good to like maybe have support systems for that in place. So that's a conversation to have for sure.
And the advocating, I mean, I had to advocate for myself and my children and foster children so much that, I lost half my hair, but it's been very, very difficult, and dealing with, well-intentioned CS workers, and then dealing with the ones that are not so well-intentioned has been quite challenging. And to have somebody who's removed who can advocate for you would be a thing, I think.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. There's a bunch of questions in the chat. It looks like the chat's popping right now. So there's a question about how much, and it'd be great for folks to answer in with like your voice as well if possible, so that it's recorded, because the conversation in the chat's not recorded, right? So so the question was, how much did folks budget to go through the process with fertility if that was needed, and what was covered by OHIP? And so Suzanne, that question is also something we're going to tackle in the workshop on both the fertility piece and then also the egg, sperm, and place to grow. So those are 2 workshops that we're going to cover all the processes around IUI, IVF, costs, ways to go around costs, because that's really important. And there's ways to like make sure that you can like figure out little dips and ways to go around cost. But folks did respond. So I don't know if panelists want to quickly just jump in and be like, that's what your answer was, or I can read them out. And there was another question for the panel as well. I can go ahead, I guess. So Deb, you said that you spent $6,000 for 6 tries with STEM. I don't know what that is.
And I ran out of money and was like, oh God. And then started going to the free Craigslist sperm. And then I found out I was pregnant. So I was like, praise Jesus. I was like, I don't want to go for that. Like, but I ran out of money. I was like freaking out. So that was
And Marcy and Lily, did you want to share? You had mentioned in yours that you that there was multiple tries, especially with IVF, and IVF is way more expensive than IUI, right?
Very much more expensive. Yeah, well, we started with me, so we had to do the IUI with me for 6 tries, and that was, I guess, edging on 10,000 alone, and then the IVF we did with Lily. And then there's the additional costs that you don't anticipate, like, freezing the embryos for later use, and, yearly refrigeration costs, and, even just like taking time off work sometimes, or, having to travel, so much across the city as we were at the time. I know that I think they do IVF now is subsidized partially. We have some friends who are actually going through the process as well. So thankfully, now there's that support, that financial support for families. But we were very fortunate that we could organized financially. We did have to take out a loan at one point.
Yeah.
So we were very committed to it, but yeah, it is very financially, a bit of a financial burden. I mean, in respect to if you don't have the resources, it really can be, almost impossible if you don't have somebody to provide the sperm, So yeah, it was, it was what it was, and we're just happy that we were able to do it. But you really do have to consider the financial aspect of it in the planning, for sure.
Yeah. And so just to clarify for folks who are listening, so IVF and IUI are very different. And if you're in Ontario, OHIP covers a significant amount of things. So technically IUI is supposed to be free, but as you will hear from the panelists, these fertility clinics do whatever they can to figure out how to make you pay for things. So they'll wash the sperm, which literally means they like wash everything out that's not actual sperm. And so they will charge you for that piece. And that's how they get their money off of you. And then for but technically the procedure and the process of going through an IUI procedure is covered technically by OHIP. For IVF, every uterus in Ontario is covered for the cycle and the process and procedure of IVF, but the drugs are not covered. So you have to pay for the drugs out of pocket, but the procedure is covered. Only one session, right? So that means you're only doing the egg retrieval and the transfers. Every transfer is free. So for example, I did IVF. I have 8 eggs frozen, or 8 embryos frozen, sorry. And I used 1 for my kid. And so there's 7 now still frozen. Anytime I want to transfer those, if I want to do 7 transfers, every transfer is free and covered. But the drugs for those are not covered. So if you have insurance from your work, that's where you want to start looking into work insurance if you're covered. If you're in precarious work or don't have insurance, then there's other ways to figure out cost. There's also different places online. A lot of folks will share extra drugs that they have from their cycles that they didn't end up using that they have. So there are places where we can also like share these things if we need to. So yeah, there's lots of DIY, but TJ, you had added and that gets into the sperm cost as well. So if you want to share about sperm costs for you, sperm cost has gone up as well. So a vial of sperm from a sperm bank back in like 2015 would have cost $750. It's now about like $1,200 for one vial. One vial is like one try, right? So you want to think about the things, and you want to think about these conversations we've been having and the ways that people have created their families. Sometimes known donors legally is a very different situation than it was before 2017, right? Before, when we had known donors before, they were able to claim parental rights. That's not the case anymore, right? So there's a lot more possibility now that known donors are legally more, you have more rights as a parent. And so we'll talk about all that in the workshop. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty details of it, but if you're interested in finding out this information or these details, then we can talk more about cost and process and all the things that come with that. I don't know, TG and Samina, you also shared, and Leroy, I think it's really important to share your experience of free 99 pregnancy and what that looks like. So feel free, anybody who wants to jump in.
Hey, yeah, I just said that the first time around I didn't have any expenses. This time around I've been trying for about 8 months and not having good luck. And so I've just recently connected with a fertility clinic and I hate it. I hate it so much. But I've been advised that I'll have to pay about $500 per IUI attempt to cover exactly what Aruna described, the sperm washing. So the expense will be $500 a month, but that's only because I'm not having to pay for the sperm, which would substantially increase it.
Yeah. Sperm is a big cost. Anybody else want to touch on this? There's also another question that I wanted to also make sure.
Yeah, like you said, when I first started with my first kid, it was 2012, and sperm was like significantly less expensive. And I was just reading, and storage also. So once you pick the donor, you can choose how much sperm you want to buy, like reserve. And I think it was like $250 a year, but now I saw that's one post that it was up to like $500 a year for the refrigeration. So those are costs too, to factor in.
Yeah. Leroy, did you want to add?
Yeah, just that I guess like sometimes the cost of things depends on what you actually say when you go in and talk to people. So it's important to know like some of the rules around it. Like I know at the time when I was getting pregnant, if you have fertility issues, then you can get like cycle monitoring covered and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like I'm a trans man and my partner is a cis woman. So I was like, I have fertility issues. We can try to get pregnant 1,000 times for 10 years and we won't get pregnant. So I consider that a fertility issue. So yes, I have fertility issues. So like sometimes it just depends, like it just depends what you say.
Yeah, sorry, just saying hi. Yeah, for sure. And that's really important because I think it changes based on like, there's little things like, I know this is kind of coming out of practice right now for clinics, but a lot of folks who weren't having sex with someone with sperm would say that they were having sex with someone with sperm in order to kind of forego all of the tests that come with that. And they would bring them in being like, this is my partner, we are now having a baby. And so it would be this way that a lot of queer and trans folks would be like offset the costs of having to go through all the tests, because then they charge you for those tests. So yeah, there's tons of ways around it. And we can talk about what OHIP covers and what it doesn't in one of the workshops for sure. But yeah, as you were telling us, Leroy, in your experience, you said it, I can't remember, we were reading it. Oh, for you, it was free. So thinking about also how you want to do it is also important, because if you have access to sperm, that is actually like really great, right? Like that's the biggest piece of it. That's such a huge issue. We have such a lack of sperm in this community, or at least sperm that they want to share with us. There's sperm there, they just don't want to give it out. So if folks know people who have sperm, I mean, I've always said that I wanted to start like a sperm bank pretty much for BIPOC folks, because there's no BIPOC sperm. And I feel like people with sperm really need to figure out how to just like give that away and be happy with giving it away. But it's complicated. For a lot of BIPOC folks with sperm, I think it's really complex. So, but yeah, I really want to start it. I just don't know how to do it, but I'm going to figure it out and then I'll get back to you. There was one question outside of cost for, oh, I lost it. Where is it? Okay, here it is. How did you figure out you were ready to have a kid? And so this is our last 5 minutes together. If folks wanted to really quickly just, share that kind of spark light bulb moment where you were like, I know I want to do this. This is it. And I wanted to also welcome our newest panelist, Claude. Hello. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, feel free to add how you came to really knowing, what, this is happening, or maybe you didn't and you're just like, we're just going to roll with it anyways.
Yeah.
Because that's real too.
I was like, I'm just bringing a next baby home. Like, that's it. Like, it was 9 days. She was like, do I want to, I was like, do you want to put your name on the birth certificate? It's 9 days. He's been born for 9 days. Are you going to do it? Are you going to put the name on the, she was like, okay. Like, she would hang out with me for 10 months pregnant. I had so many kids in my life already. I wanted the one. I felt jealous when all those kids ran to their parents and kissed them and hugged them in a way that was so unique, not auntie, not Debbie who gives you candy, just like, and I wanted that. I didn't want more. I'm one and done, but I wanted that bond, and I certainly feel so grateful to Adley for having that. So that's how I got there.
Yeah, I think for us it was
we weren't getting any younger.
And also I think it's our relationship was just at the point where we loved each other and we just wanted to create more of that love, and the perfect way is just to grow a family, make our own family.
Yeah. Share your lives with little people. Those little people.
And they really do fill your life
Mhm.
in ways that you could never imagine.
And the sleep will come.
Anyone else on the panel want to share that spark moment where you're like, yes, I'm doing this? I can share mine. So I've been wanting to be a parent for a long time. Also kind of similar to Selena, I was like, partners would say, yes, want to do it. Oh my gosh, I'm so down. I want to like build a family with you, blah, blah, blah. All these liars. No, I'm kidding. Just people who just like, really wanted the idea, I think, but then also it's a lot of commitment, right? It's like, it really means you're in it with this person. And so I think that I had a lot of people who came and went. And then I was like, you know what? The only person who gets to decide this is me. And I have always parented. And that's another piece to it as well. I think that as someone who's always parented in different ways, I parented my sisters, I parented partners, I parented different people in my life. And so I knew that I had the capacity and the ability to really love big and really love well. And I was just I felt like I was in a place in my life where I was ready. So I had like a job that I really loved. I had a community I really loved. I was in a good place with myself. I had been doing like a lot of work on myself in terms of like therapy, like even just like working on my own like traumas. Because trust me, when you have children, they bring up everything, all the inner child stuff, all the like harm that you experience, all the trauma that your parents gave you, it comes right back at you. But also you get to like learn and like love and play through them, so it's this really beautiful like healing process that happens. And so I was ready for it. I just felt like I really want to do this. I had like this last hurrah in New York City with my best friends, and I got like really, really fucked up every day for like 4 days. And I literally went back to Toronto, and then came back to Toronto, and then I was like, okay, we're doing this. And I went straight into cycle monitoring, and then I got pregnant. So I was just like, let's just do it. And yeah, it's been a really hard journey, but I literally wake up so excited every day to hang out with this kid. She's like the best choice I've ever made with my life. So yeah, I think on that note, if there's nothing else from the panel that anybody wants to share, we have one last question that I think is really important to maybe kind of end off on. Are there any tips for online or offline QT BIPOC parenting community? That's a really beautiful question. How do we connect with each other, either online or offline? How have you connected with other QT BIPOC parents? If anybody has any kind of advice on that. We can list from the jump, we can list some Facebook groups that exist. So there are a few Facebook groups for like, not specifically BIPOC, but there are a few BIPOC spaces for parents. Anybody else have any? Old School? Okay, Old School is a really great space in the East End that we all love, yeah. Onar, you have your hand up, and I think Sanina also had their hand up. Go ahead, you can unmute yourselves.
I just wanted to say that the forums like this are also really great and important to get connected with folks. This is how our initial connection started with, that very small group you facilitated at Sherburne, Aruna. So I think they are important places, the forums like this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, ideally we have more of these spaces as well. And I plan to make sure that this entire series is BIPOC centered. So everything about this is going to be like for us. And then, I mean, from that, everyone get support, so when we center it for BIPOC folks. Savina, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as somebody who lives in the suburbs, it's a bit harder to find queer BIPOC folks to connect with. There's an amazing BIPOC queer group out here in Mississauga that many of you may know, but it's not really a child-friendly space. When I brought Jamil to one of the meetings, it was like, this is the first time we've had a kid here, and that's the product of a lot of like systemic barriers that folks have to having children. And so I still want him to be a part of that. And but for me, it's a work in progress of having local community that are other queer BIPOC folks. And other than that, it's like my friends and commuting downtown from Mississauga anytime we want to be around people that look like us and that share our values is the reality of it. But
Yeah.
it's still, you know, we're doing it and we're thriving. So maybe that's the moral of that story.
Yeah. And then, yeah, Marcy and Lily, did you want to talk about the 519?
Yeah, when we had our daughter, we actually found out through the Dykes Planning Tykes. That was around back then. I'm not sure if it still is, but that was the queer parent planning program available at the time. And then they would have, I can't remember if it was weekly or monthly, but
Monthly.
they would have, you know, parent and child community center meetups, and parents could mingle. They would have, you know, celebratory occasions for Halloween and Christmas. Pride was amazing, especially at the splash pad. That's where all the families would hang, and it evolved. And I imagine that it's probably even bigger now. We haven't been back for quite some time, but it was really a space where we could feel like we were represented as a family, and we made some connections, and it was just really lovely. Great experience. I would recommend it for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. Before we finish, I also just want to say, like, there are QT BIPOC families everywhere, right? And so see if there are folks in your community that already exist that also, I mean, we also need help. We also need support, right? We also are around, and I would love for people to come and take my kid for a walk or whatever. So, you know, if there are people who are like looking to have little people in their life or build that community, I think it starts with action, right? Parents also need support. We need access to spaces. We need people to prioritize us and our kids in spaces and in organizing, right? I feel like organizing spaces are really hard to navigate when you have kids. So yeah, make spaces accessible. But yeah, on that note, I just wanted to say thank you so much to this beautiful panel of humans and your littles and your experiences and your journeys. It's such an honor to work with you and know you and just like learn from you. And yes, I hope that this is the first of many. I also want to thank Thunder for opening up for us. That was such a beautiful way to just experience the morning and to open up this space with each other. So thank you, Thunder, for choosing to be here with us. And to Gab and to all the people who made this happen, Anna and Gab and everybody. And on that note, I just want to send gratitude, and I hope you have a beautiful Saturday. And yeah, until next time. And if you are interested in any of the topics that the panelists talked about today, please join us. All of the workshops are up on the Seed and Sprout. And panelists, please share them with your community as well, because they're going to be really great and really have a lot of information that folks will need for this process and journey that people are on. So again, thank you, everyone. Take care.